Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Law of Attraction 2.0, Widening the Lens on the Law of Attraction. If you're enjoying Kris's unparalleled metaphysical content, then please hit the like button, subscribe, press the bell icon so that you get notified when we release cool, new metaphysical content. It's really the only way that the YouTube algorithm will notice Kris's work. So if you want to help out the channel, press the like button, hit subscribe, and let's jump into the content.
Now we trust that you are comfortable. And we thank you for your consideration.
And for yours as well.
So as this particular journey unfolds, it might be very important to keep in mind that any future presentation is not necessarily about what one knows, but more so about what the listener, the viewer, the individual receiving this communication might discover. It has to be central to them. They have to be the center of this experience, of this experiment.
For sure. Yeah.
This is how they discover who they truly are. This is how they discover exactly what is this law of attraction. Is it something that was imposed upon the universe? Is it something that was heaved upon their shoulders or yoked upon their necks? Something that they must abide by? On the contrary, this is the natural, inherent property of the individual, of the self, of the soul. Just like you might Google, what are the properties of apple juice? It is this, it is that, it is that. What are the properties of the self? Right up there would show up, in this case, in Meta Google, is one of the major properties of the soul or the self or the individual is how the self, the individual creates. And the individual creates by the utilization of very specific mechanisms. The emotions, the feelings, the imagination, in concert with the overall tone of their being, what they concentrate upon. This is what they do. This is what every single living entity, not just human beings, but living entity. Living entity includes even the most minute quanta, the unit of consciousness. Consciousness. So not just a person, an individual, a human being, but all animals, all forms of life, sentient and apparently non-sentient. And in those terms, something is simply non-sentient because the sentient being cannot sense it. Specifically because they rely upon their physical senses. So to most individuals, for instance, a mountain, the ocean, the clouds, the sky, these are just things to be used. However, those particular things are extensions of the properties of the human being, of the self. So everything has to be about what kind of benefit the individual acquires simply by recognizing how they create, which means that they can transform any aspect of their reality they somehow or other fall in discord with. Does that make sense?
Well, yes. And I think having been a teacher facilitator for so long, my intention was to share the information. And so it's really not about me. Of course it's about me.
Your
About
own
sharing-
experiences are invaluable in that area because it shows
Correct.
other people, oh, I can do that. Of course you
Exactly.
can.
What I have had an advantage I have had is that I have been an intense studier or follower of the law of attraction, as you know, and of course, then the 18 years with you. And I know what I received from both pools of information. And it's exciting for me to think about an opportunity for those who are seeking more information that we can, perhaps contribute to that.
Indeed. So, for instance, if you look at the words law of attraction, so individuals either attract or repel simultaneously, just like a battery has two polarities. That is how the battery functions. So the individual attracts or repels. The individual attracts anything and everything they concentrate upon, simultaneously meaning that they repel what they do not concentrate upon. They do not activate it. So if they concentrate, for instance, on their worries, on their concerns, on their pain, on their trauma, they cannot attract abundance, health, well-being, and so on and so forth, because they are concentrating on its opposite.
Yes, and I see getting very specific at some point. Because what's made a difference for me is, well, a number of things. One of them is that there are a gazillion probabilities for any one particular situation.
Correct.
And even thinking about that, and where is my feeling tone pointing? What probability am I putting energy on? I don't hear, and maybe it's because I haven't studied it for a while, I don't hear people talking about probabilities very much. And even though in the early days, Esther, we used to have what was it that attracted? Was it the thought or was it the emotion? And we landed on the emotion. I did not see at the time, or did not hear at the time, the idea that a belief creates a feeling tone, and it's the feeling tone that actually attaches itself to a particular probability. And just even knowing that means at any point in time, I'm creating whatever is going on in my life.
Indeed. As well as creating what you want, you also create what you do not want, what you attract and what you do not attract. Therefore, it stands to reason that the individual exists in a sea of probabilities.
Bingo. Yes.
And in this way, you draw those probable realities upon which you concentrate.
Yep.
And that is one of the major relevant points that can free the individual to know that what they do not have in their lives, the things that they want, already exist. It is not something that must be created through meditations and incantations and special dances where you swirl around counterclockwise while rubbing your belly clockwise. It already exists. The universe is abundant with everything you want and do not want. The key point is, what are you concentrating upon. That is the law in so many words. Though we are not necessarily particularly fond of the word law, but you get the principal idea. Everything already exists.
Yes.
What you have or do not have in your life is dependent upon where your focus is. So the idea of developing this series is to assist individuals to realize, to recognize this is the power that you have. This is your innate spiritual, psychological, psychic strength. You bring into your reality whatever you focus on. So if you focus on lack, oh, woe is me, I do not have the money. Woe is me, I do not have health. I do not have wealth. Unfortunately, you are drawing to yourself whatever is in your mind. Switch the narrative, turn it around. And then something miraculous, it happens.
So I would even want to get a little more specific, and we will, because if I'm thinking right now as I'm sitting having to pay bills, for example, and my thoughts are, I don't have enough money in my bank account to cover this month's bills. In that moment, and I'm never going to have them, I'm always struggling with this, let's say. In that moment, and I want this thread, in that moment, I'm creating an emotion, a feeling tone.
Correct.
And that feeling tone is reaching out into the many probabilities around my finances, of which there could be hundreds, right? And
it is reaching to all the probabilities where you just don't have enough.
And it's finding that emotional tone, it's finding that particular idea of probability, which is exactly what I focused on. And guess what?
You end up not having enough.
Exactly. We can get very, very specific about this.
Indeed. That is why people do not realize that they are all scientists. A scientist experiments. People experiment. Sometimes the experiment goes awry. They get so caught up in it, they forget that their own reality is the petri dish.
Yep. Yep.
So the idea of this series can have monumental effects into the lives, not only of your own, but of those who would view and listen to these videos and enrich their existence.
Yeah, well, that's my hope. Absolutely. No.
Indeed.
No, that's my expectation.
Indeed. And might we be so bold as to suggest that this discussion being videoed right now become the introduction? Because you have done absolutely excellent. We tricked you, did we not?
Okay.
Indeed.
It was good. I do agree. That was a great discussion.
Stay tuned.
Indeed. Now, how do you say in the film industry? Time out.
Time out.
Indeed.
Yes. Perfect.
Right. Thanks, Kris. Thanks for watching, and if you would like to leave a question for Kris, drop it in the comments below. Myself, Serge, or someone from the Kris team will be checking and may use them to drive the discussion, put them in future episodes. So if you'd like to interact with the Kris community, feel free. Put your questions below, and we'd love to hear from you, and see you again next time.